Hi, ladies, and welcome. Today, we are speaking about the importance of time management, and we have the lovely Amanda Lecaude with us. Hi, Amanda.
Hi, Danielle. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for joining us. So, Amanda is an organising expert and academic life coach who loves being able to help people, her clients, get organised. She sees the difference it makes in their everyday lives, particularly families, just to have a way to create some time, space, and balance. Oh, I love those three words. She's also very passionate about equipping school students with organising skills for life to maximise greater results, primarily in secondary school, and to limit the overwhelm and frustration for both them and their parents. So thank you for joining us this morning, Amanda. It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, as I said, for having me.
And especially because we're talking about time management. And as busy women, we hear it so much. Why is it so important to, really sit down and have a think about what we're doing with our time and managing it?
I think the challenge is obviously time's not finite, so you can't add more time to our days. Even though, as I often say, and I think I wrote and mentioned in the blog that accompanies this, that I love a couple of extra hours every now and again myself. So, but you just can't. You physically can't. So there's obviously only so much time that you can fit everything in. We're busy women often. We've often got, families. We're obviously trying to juggle a job. We're often doing all sorts of different things, volunteering, running children to sporting activities. There's just so many things that we're trying to fit in. And obviously to be able to function effectively and productively, we need to be able to manage our time. And without that, then everything can fall apart.
Yeah, I often say that I am my kids' PAs, running them around here, doing this for them, and on top of the house, on top of the business as well. So it's not easy, that's for sure. But, we hear the word balance. I'm not a huge fan of the actual word balance because I don't know if it's some sort of myth that's out there. But is that really what we're after?
I think you're right in the sense it's not necessarily the best word. And I think what we're trying to do is we're just trying to achieve and function to the best we possibly can. And for everybody, that balance, as you say, is different. So what works for me and my sort of levels of comfort and management of time and so forth is very different probably to yours and to everyone else's. It's just about, I think, being able to manage yourself effectively so you can fit those things in you want to, but not necessarily just those things that you have to do, but as I said, those things you want to do as well. So I think it's really important as women that we also take time for ourselves, because often we're the ones that suffer when we have got a lot to do, and we probably don't take that extra time when we actually should be, because we actually generally are then better off by having had some time to ourselves and doing those things we enjoy.
And making sure that we're healthy and looking after ourselves. It's funny you say that because I know that in my own personal life and business life, sometimes the business needs me more, sometimes the kids need me more, sometimes there's more to do around the house. And it's amazing having the flexibility to be able to lean whichever way I need to, whenever I need to.
And I think that's the thing, Danielle, and that's exactly, you've hit the nail on the head, because that balance of this week is different to that balance of next week and so forth. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. We do need to be pulled in different directions at different times, and we need to allow ourselves permission, I guess, to do that, because sometimes we don't. We think, I should be doing this and I should be spending this many hours doing this, when in fact you just can't physically and possibly do it sometimes.
Yeah, I think the word guilt comes into effect when it's those situations as well.
And again, I think, as I said before, you need to give yourself permission to not feel guilty, because unfortunately, women are notorious for it, and we need to take that away. I know myself, for instance, as you mentioned before, I do a lot of work with students, and so I'm often working in the evenings now with students, because obviously I can't work with them during the day while they're at school. So that means then I'm often working all day and then a few hours every night. Now, I need to get better, I know myself, at making a bit more time for myself in the day and not feeling like I have to work all day and then do that at night, because it's just, I can't sustain that.
Yeah,
So
give yourself the hours off because you're making it up elsewhere anyway.
yeah, so we need to all work that out to the best that we can that suits us individually.
Yeah. Yes. And is it realistic for us to aim to be superwoman, Amanda?
I don't think so. I think, again, we can all do it at times, but again, I don't think it's sustainable over a long period of time, because I think if you're trying to absolutely do everything and be on top of everything, it's very hard. Some people can, and that works for them, but for others, it doesn't. So I often get told or asked the question, you must be so organised, you must be able to manage your time, you must be able to do everything. And yes, to a certain extent I can, and I have the tools and the strategies to do it. But at the same time, I'm a mum, I have a family, and there's times where, I just, if you look at my office at the moment, for instance, we've just renovated our house and my office is a bit of a mess. Now, that's not how I like to function, but for the moment, it's just what it is. And you have to be okay with that. You don't have to have these perfect looking houses or perfect looking, offices or what have you, because we need to function too and live. So there are times, but it's about having the tools and strategies to pull it back when you need to.
And I guess one thing, you just mentioned there, having the perfect house, perfectly clean house. You also have to think, because I know my mum's house is always perfectly clean, and that's what I've grown up in. And so you kind of got to let go of that, because we're living different lives to the past generations as well.
Yes, definitely. And I think, again, you have to find what works for you. So, and really, at the end of the day, it doesn't matter to anyone else. It's like I say to the students that I work with in Year 6, I say, talk to them about what does organisation mean. And I say to them that it's different. I use the analogy of a pencil case. If I gave three different people a pencil case to organise, they'd probably organise it in 3 different ways. And that's okay, because what works for one doesn't necessarily work for the other. And just because your friend does it that way doesn't mean you have to do it that way. So again, it's really finding what works for you from an organisational point of view, but also, now that obviously we're talking about time management, what works for you, and follow that accordingly.
Yeah. And like I said, different things for different personality types, and et cetera, et cetera. So I guess that leads us into, what sort of tips can you share to help with time management?
Well, I think there's a number of different tips, and I think the first one is obviously being able to manage your time using some sort of a planner. That is just crucial, and this is the challenge is we live in the now often, which is today, maybe tomorrow, and some people are better at obviously planning ahead further than that, but generally you live in that short window of time. So but in order to manage time, you need to be able to see time. And without being able to see time, then it makes it even harder. So the other challenge we have too is we live in a digital world now. So, we're all looking at our computers, our devices. So we see what the current time is. But to manage time, you need to see that time has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And that's where often I think we get unstuck, because you can easily, not realise how much time you actually got, or you're dwindling away because you get stuck on something that you perhaps shouldn't have. So I'm very big on, using a planner. I'm also very big on having lists. And again, that works for me. Not everyone is, but I like to, I guess, sit down at the start of every day when I'm working, and what are the 3 main things I need to get through today? And then if I get through more than 3, great. And then, I can just keep working off my list. But I think it's good to sort of be realistic and have, and have some goals as well.
And could you do this, like you're saying, planner and having a list digitally or on paper, whatever works for you?
Again, it doesn't really matter. And that's what I say to students and to adults alike. I don't care what you use. I think the main thing is that you actually use something. So it's finding the right thing for you. I still got a big paper diary, and it works for me.
I couldn't go anywhere without my diary.
Yeah. So, whereas some people like that digital, and, particularly now with Google Calendar and other things where you can share them with your family. So that can work too. It's really just finding what works and sticking to it, I think, is important. And it's taking the time to plan as well, Danielle, I think is really important. So, it might be a Sunday night, or whatever time during the week that works for you, and spend that 5, 10, 15 minutes to plan, either your day or the week ahead, or your children's activities, or whatever it is, so that you can sort of manage it.
And you know what's coming.
Yeah, because the last thing is, you realise it's like, oh, I forgot about that, and then you've got to, it's mucked up your whole day, and you've got to factor it in, and then you're running out the door, and you feel like you're trying to catch your tail all the time. So I think the planning is really important. Multitasking is another one. So in particular, I think we as women think, as you said before, we can be superwoman and we can do it all. And so some people can actually multitask and do a couple of things at the same time, but it is a bit of a myth. And really, to do things properly, you really need to focus on, one thing at a time. Mind you, I say that and I'll be, cooking dinner. I'll be, probably texting or responding to a message, so I am, there are times where I'm certainly doing several things at once, and that's okay. Again, it's got to work with you. You've got to work it and fit it in.
And I think with the multitasking, it depends what the tasks are, because I know that I can be hanging out the washing and I can be brainstorming in my head or, quickly check an email in between. So I think it depends on the level of brain intensity, if that makes sense.
Definitely.
Activity, yeah.
Yeah. I often have my best ideas in the shower.
Yeah.
And so I'm having a shower, but my brain's obviously got that time to, just think for a few minutes, whereas
clear.
It's clear. And I think that's what you're saying. Even when you're hanging out the washing, it's whilst you're doing something else, it's sort of, there's not a lot of brain intensity involved in those things. So you just, do it on autopilot as well. So I think the other thing that we as women also need to do a little bit better, and I know myself, I've gotten better at this, is outsourcing or delegating. Because I know I used to try and do it all. I used to try and clean my house. I used to, do all sorts of different things. Whereas now, I have a cleaner and it's once a fortnight. Okay, it's a little bit of a luxury, but at the same time, it means I'm not doing it on a weekend and I've got time to spend time with my family and so forth. So again, you need to work out what's important to you and how you might be able to fit those things in. I'm also at a stage with my business now that I'm potentially looking at outsourcing a little bit of my admin work, because again, the time involved in that sometimes, I could be better spending my time somewhere else. So we just need to sort of be aware of those things and make those decisions, as needed.
Yeah. And I think with outsourcing, you're saying some admin. So I've done a lot of outsourcing this year personally in the business, but I think it's also really important that as you're working, you become conscious of the jobs that you can get someone else to do as you're doing them. So even if you kind of think, oh, I'm not ready now, but there's something I can write on my list for next month, I can get someone to do my newsletter or whatever the thing is. As you're doing it, it's the best time to kind of have it top of mind and make a note of it as well.
Yeah, and I think that's really important. The other one, which I guess touches on sort of what you're talking about there, as you're doing things, how often, I guess, are we doing things as well, sitting down at our computer, or we're focusing on work or what have you, and a thought pops into your mind. Now, obviously you want to try and maintain focus of what you're doing at the time. So I often suggest to people, have a little distraction notepad, next to you, whereby you just note that down, that thought that came into your head. It might have been, oh, I've got to pick up the dry cleaning, or, whatever. And you just note it down, and then you can get back to doing what you're doing. And when you're finished, then you can have a look at that notepad and see what you wrote. So sometimes that can help you to keep focused on what you're doing. I know I talk to students about that all the time. So, but I think we can certainly use some of these, strategies as well.
I think I'm doing all right, Amanda. As you're speaking, I'm like, okay, yes, I've got my physical diary and I have my notepad where I jot things down. So I'm getting big ticks from you this morning.
Well, that's good. I'm glad to hear it's all working with you. So I think the other one is I mentioned and touched on earlier, is just taking breaks and making sure you've got that time, because again, none of us can sustain working 24/7. So we're not going to be achieving what we want to achieve if we are trying to do that all the time. So breaks are important to help you to just take that time to step back, have a think, and sort of move forward as well. And accompany that, I guess, as well, is learning to say no. And that's something I definitely did when I first started my business. And I really put in a lot of time and effort around learning to say no, because I guess I'd been working for a couple of years probably. And at the same time, I think I was on the school council. I was kinder committee person. I was managing this cricket sporting club, for juniors, and, all these things. And it was like, I love doing all of that, but at the same time, there has to be a point where you have to learn to say no, because, you've got to put yourself first, or your business first, or your family first, or whatever it may be at times. That's not to say, that's not to say I'll never do it again, but, there's just different times to manage your time where you need to be able to say no.
It's about prioritising, isn't it?
Yep.
Yeah.
And that's the other one, is the prioritising. So I think, again, as women, and I know we're not touching on this today in terms of, goals and goal setting and so forth, but I think it's also important with your time that you do have some form of goals or things that you're trying to achieve, or what you're trying to do in a business sense. So I have a list up on my wall, which I can always see. And I guess that can help you keep focus and keep track of what you're trying to do, and not get distracted by those shiny objects that, come into our focus at times when it's not really aligned with our goals. So why are we doing that?
Yeah.
Sometimes it is, by all means, and these new ideas or things come up and, you run with them. But I think, again, sometimes, maybe it's a matter of writing that down and, looking at it or reassessing it next time rather than, now.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's, you need the time to reassess, because those things change.
Yeah, all the time. We always, And I think that's the other thing too, is taking the time, as we touched on planning before, and we talked about that, very briefly in a time management sense. But I think for your business as well, spending that time planning, it's taking yourself away from your business and spending, a couple of days even just to focus on, what it is you're trying to do and achieve and so forth, can really be effective in helping you manage your time, because you know exactly what it is you're trying to do and achieve, so that you can, use that time a bit more wisely.
Exactly. So you've spoken about, we're saying diary, doesn't matter if it's digital or old school, Exhibit A. To-do lists.
Yep.
Top 3 things for the day. But look ahead to see what's coming. Don't
really
be caught out like me on the morning and go to school and someone goes, we've got that today. I'm like, oops, I forgot about that one. The next one, I've been lost here now, Amanda.
We talked about a few different things. So not multitasking.
No multitasking, yes.
Taking the time to plan, prioritising. We talked about taking breaks.
Yeah.
Learning to. You go.
So with taking breaks as well, because I know when I used to work from an office, I took more breaks than when I now work from home.
Yep.
Which I found really interesting, because it's a bit of a change in my routine and how I do things. So it's really interesting now, because I really have to prioritise taking those breaks. Whereas before, I'd get up to go to the toilet and I'd stop to talk to someone on the way, and so I would just, happen to have a break without realising it. But at home, you have to be really, really organised.
Yep.
In order to kind of yes, I've got 10 minutes or 15 minutes to just sit and eat lunch, or I just want to read a book for 15 minutes over a cup of coffee or whatever it might be. Yep. But you have to really be regimented more, I think, working from home in those instances.
I think so too. But then you've got the other extreme, Danielle, too. If you're not very good at working at home as opposed to working in an office, and you find you waste a lot of time too, because you find things to do around the house that distract you and take that focus away, you've got to be disciplined enough to make sure you sit and work. Now, I'm like you, I can do that. I don't have any problems in doing that. Mind you, there are days, some days it's like, oh, well, I'm just going to do something else for, today.
Procrastination.
And that's another big time waster. I mean, for sure, you cannot, it's just, when you've got to get something done, I guess sometimes even a little tip, I have a little time timer here, and I mean, I mainly use it for students and what have you, but sometimes even I use it and I set it. It's like, right, I'm going to do half an hour, and just focus for that half an hour so that you get what it is you need to get done.
So, a lot of people use that, that app, is it Pomodoro?
Yep, which
as
is
well. Same idea.
Similar to this. So it's what I often say to students, it's working for sort of 20 or 25 minutes and then having a 5-10 minute break, which is basically the Pomodoro method in a sense, and then doing it over and over again. So, but some people need that even just to get started. Sometimes that can help you sit down and get into what it is you need to do.
Yeah.
And then you might not need to do it again. Whereas some people would like to, be a bit more regimented. And
I guess that comes with the personality types, because you have to find what works for you.
Exactly.
So, Amanda has written a blog on this topic for us, which is also in our online library, where she goes into more detail on each of these tips as well. So I really recommend that you go through and find the ones that work for you. Not everything is going to work for everybody. So It's about being realistic as well, I think.
Yeah, definitely. And you're right. As I said, it goes back to what works for you. And as you said, being realistic and managing it that way.
Yeah, beautiful. Well, thank you so much for your time this morning, Amanda. I'm not sure if there's anything else you would like to add that we may have quickly glossed over, or I think we've covered a lot.
No, I think we have covered a lot. And I think, as I've highlighted, that me time is really important. So you generally function better as a person if you do take that me time, whether it be going to the gym or, reading a book, as you said, or, just going for a walk, whatever it might be that you enjoy doing. I still encourage you to factor in to your day as well.
Yeah. As you say that, I am thinking about my new one when the weather warms up, is take the dog for a walk just around the block, just at lunchtime. Yep. It's only going to take me 5-10 minutes. It's not far, but it's just that one activity that kind of gets me out of my work zone, gets me out of the mum zone, and just clears the mind. Yeah,
and again, you probably come up with a great idea while you're walking.
That's right. That's exactly right. I'll come up with my best ideas.
And then you'll be doing them all the time.
Exactly. Thank you so much for your time this morning, Amanda. Really appreciate it.
No worries. Thank you for having me.
I'm sure we'll chat to you soon. See you later.
See ya. Bye.